All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, because I think there's a big international audience out there, which is one of the cool things about doing this on the interwebs. Thank you so much to the Portland Film Festival for having us. My name is Gina Young. My pronouns are she or they, and I'm here in Los Angeles on Tongva territory to talk, to converse, to have a whole conversation with We the Women, who are some amazing women that I've been collaborating with here in LA, and they have been so kind to extend this invitation to me to have this dialogue today with all of you. A little bit about what I do. I am a playwright and director who is now stepping into the world of filmmaking and screenwriting. And We the Women, I actually have a series called Sorority, which was a platform that I created in Los Angeles for new work by women and trans and queer performing artists. And it was all live on stage until, we ended up sort of gravitating into the YouTube world. And then with the advent of the pandemic, it has become a lot more digital and about digital content. And We the Women have just always been so, I look to them as badass creators that are so aligned with, what I do and the kind of work that I want to see in the world. And I think that both of our organizations have been on a similar trajectory, which I'm sure a lot of you have experienced as well, with the way that the pandemic has changed the game and sort of brought things into these online spaces. So I will pass it to them to introduce themselves, Sam and Nat.
Hi, we're Sam and Nat. I'm Sam. I'm one half of the co-founders of We the Women Collective. And this is Nathalie, the other half.
I am Nathalie, and I am she, her pronouns, and we are also in Los Angeles, and We the Women is based out of Los Angeles. And thank you, Gina, for that incredible introduction.
And thank you to the Portland Film Festival for having us. And we're so excited to be here and so excited to share our Keep This Far Apart trailer with you today. Just a little bit about We the Women. We sort of began as a nonprofit theater company whose mission was to staff up all women in leadership positions and primarily theater professionals. So theater actors and directors and playwrights, and we've since transitioned into a cross-genre production entity where we produce live and digital and film and TV, and that's been a really exciting transition for us when one of our live performances got turned into a TV show for Amazon Prime, which is now going on its second season, called Dearly Departed. Yeah, so that's a little bit about We the Women and what we do. Which is not totally dissimilar to what you do with Sorority, which we think is so incredible.
Definitely. We're definitely aligned. You did mention what I should have mentioned right in the beginning, which is that we are going to screen the trailer today for Keep This Far Apart, which is the project that we worked on collaboratively. We're very excited to share that trailer with all of you. But before we get there, why don't we start with just a little bit more, you touched on the origins of We the Women, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you came to be, because I don't even know that much about how you came to be. And I think that what you do is very unique in the landscape of Los Angeles.
Yeah, go ahead.
There you go.
Well, I think the landscape of Los Angeles is a really good place to start. Nathalie and I were both theater people who went to theater school and were really always interested in theater, and that was sort of the thing that we loved most. But when we moved to LA, we were focusing primarily on film and TV and auditioning, and I think we sort of saw around us as actors. And I think we sort of saw around us this wealth of talent in the theater community, and that for whatever reason, theater was looked at as a lesser art form in LA than it is in other places like New York. And so we sort of wanted to get a community of people together and put on a play. And we sort of devised of this plan in 2016, right after the election. And we were just trying to find a way to participate in the conversation in the only way we knew how, which was through theater. And we ended up putting on a show, which sort of became this event. It was a theater performance, it was a musical performance, it was a screening, it was a art gallery, and we put it on at the Palace Theater downtown, and we did it to benefit Planned Parenthood and ended up raising upwards of $30,000 for that. And when we did this, Nathalie always said we sort of like tricked people into going to the theater to be part of this sort of community experience that we think LA really needed. And from there, the company sort of just took its own course.
Yeah, we were really, really inspired because, you know, like Sam said, theater is a lesser art form. LA is kind of a hard city because everybody's in their car bubbles or their house bubbles, and it's you know, it's not like there isn't that energy that you have in a London or a New York.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that is part of the reason. But what we found by, you know, putting on this event, and it was a limited time. So our model is pop-up performances. So we did 2 performances for that first event, and it was all built around the play, but we got such an incredible turnout. We raised this incredible amount of money, and we were so inspired, and people really do, you know, desire this community, and you know, just that's been our goal since then. It's just to foster this community. These people do come out. These people do want to connect and support each other. And in that process, kind of, this was just a one-off in the beginning, and we just happened to kind of assemble this team of amazing creative women, and that's how we came up with We the Women. Was just that every single person that was in a position of leadership, from costume design to set design to you know, all of our production managers, director, everything, were all these fantastic, amazing women that came together to put this whole thing on. And so since then, that has been our mission for every project that we do.
Yeah, that's right. Staffing up women in leadership was really organic to us. It wasn't something that we necessarily set out to do. It was the thing that happened so naturally, because when we would go to people and say, hey, we're doing this thing, do you want to be a part of it? It was primarily women in leadership positions. That's sort of how we ended up here, and decided to sort of really move forward with that mission, because that mission was inherent to why we were created in the first place.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's one of those things that's so important, right? And I think it often gets misconstrued as like, oh, are you trying to like set quotas or make some sort of weird numbers game out of it? And it's like, no, just genuinely, like, productions and sets and everything should reflect the world that we live in. And if they don't, then there's a serious inequality or imbalance happening. And people think these things happen by accident, but they usually happen because there's some sort of discrimination happening at the top. And that's like a really important thing that I think, you know, that you've just raised with that. Yeah.
I think also, like, the wealth of talent in the theater community. I mean, as you just said in your beautiful introduction, whether you began as a playwright or not, you have matriculated into film and TV, as everyone living in this city generally does. And so the playwrights that we've been lucky enough to work with over the last 5 years of us doing this are now just extremely successful and wonderful film and TV writers because of, you know, where they started. And so we kind of wanted to pay homage to that and say, hey, like, you're a theater professional and you're not quite staffed up on a writer's room yet, or, you know, writing your own TV show or film, but, you know, is there a piece of theater that you've made in the past that we could put on, because we have this community of people that really want to come and see things. And that's sort of how it all began. But it's not totally dissimilar to sorority. Can you talk a little bit about how sorority came to be?
Yeah, totally. I think that, I mean, it's very ironic because I did actually move to LA for a job in television, like, and was very much like on that, like, writing for television track. But then I weirdly found myself pulled back into theater. And I always sort of wondered why the two, like, were so separate, you know, like, it seemed like this thing where, like, everyone had one foot in both. And yet there was this line, like this really weird division. And so anyway, so then I weirdly found myself like very much back in theater and creating theater and just being like, I think this was my first love, and that you can't really deny your first love and you just have to do it. But for me, I was missing like a specific type of queer community or a specific type of queer hub for theater that I think a lot of other cities, I mean, I felt like every other city I've lived in, and I've lived in New York, and I've lived in Seattle, and I've seen what goes down in Portland. And, you know, I feel like every other city has a community of like, you know, there's like queer performance art or queer burlesque or queer variety shows or queer coffee houses and that kind of thing. And back when I moved to LA, that didn't really seem to exist. And the artists were certainly here, but they were very like siloed or stratified. And like there were some working in Santa Monica, which for those of you who don't know, I mean, you can't, it's like me living downtown and working in Santa Monica, that's a long distance relationship. Like you can't do that. Yeah, like no one's doing that. So it's like there's stuff happening in Santa Monica, there's stuff happening like here and there, but it was so kind of spread out. And I just wanted a hub where, because I kept finding people that were so amazing that I knew that didn't know each other. And I was like, how do you two not, you do such similar work that would really inspire each other. Like, how do you not know each other? So I was like, all right, I'm going to have to do it. But the true story of the origins of sorority, which I don't know if you all know, is actually kind of a funny, dark story, which is that there was a theater, the Lyric Hyperion Theater, which I hear the Lyric Hyperion just got someone to save it, and there's going to be some sort of new management continuing it under the same vein. This theater has nurtured a lot of emerging talent in Los Angeles. And so I had been doing like kind of a play a year in that space. And the owner or whatever was like, you know, what time would you like to book for next year? Like, what's your plan for this year? What are you going to do? What's the plan? And I was like, going through a breakup and moving and like in the worst headspace. And I was like, fine, I'll do like I'll do like a salon, and I'm going to call it Quit. And I'm going to get a bunch of artists together to talk about how much we want to quit, like how much we just want to quit, how much we want to quit theater, how much we want to quit doing this because it's exhausting. And like, we're all so frustrated at the end of our ropes. And then strangely, as soon as the group of artists started coming together and the excitement around the event started to build. Oh, I have a little feedback there. Is that okay? As soon as the excitement around the event started to build, I was like, oh, we can't call this Quit. It needs a better name. Like it needs a name that accurately reflects the feeling that it is engendering. And so sorority was meant to be a very ironic, like I was never in a sorority, you know, it was very much like a kind of queer play on like, what does it mean to create our own sisterhood that is very trans inclusive, very like, you know, like everything, like that our sisterhood is welcoming, it is open, it is all genders, it is all sexualities, it is like very, very diverse on every spectrum, like every aspect of it. And to try to really make that like the core of our mission is like, how can we make this like queer and women centric, but also like for everyone and like touching upon all of these different, you know, things. So that is the secret origin story of sorority. We did shows near monthly for almost 4 years. And then the pandemic hit and we did, I think maybe 3 shows on Zoom. And that brings us.
Sorority's been around 5,
It's about
5 years.
I mean, I want to say, I think we were founded in 2016. And I do think there's something to what you said about the Trump election, that there was a thing of like being so mad about the Trump election. And I actually around the same time was like, I need to start playing bass in a band again. Like I need to make loud music because like protesting is really important. Voting is a good thing to do if you can do it, but it's like you also need this like outlet creatively for this rage, you know, and I think that's what we were all feeling. So yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
so much
what we can thank Trump for, as a creative motivation.
The only good thing to come out of the Bush years and the Trump years is what happened artistically for us.
But so much of what we the women and sorority both do is like connecting, just putting the right people, the right creative talent in the room together and just sort of letting them create. That's so much of what it is, which is kind of how we don't.
Right. And it kind of, I think it proves my point a little bit that we founded our organizations in the same year, but then didn't meet until years later because LA is so spread out and like it's so possible to have the same, you know, ethics and mission as someone or as another organization and still not really have your paths cross. And then when they finally did, we were like, oh, we have to collaborate, like we have to do something together. And then we've kind of been like dancing around a bunch of little mini collaborations since then, which brings us actually to our first official collaboration, which is Keep This Far Apart. Maybe you can tell us, give us the log line and the whole story of this project.
Who came up with this concept? So,
Well, I guess I did. So Keep This Far Apart was birthed out of, this is right at the beginning of the pandemic. We had put on a fundraiser, which was our wake for 2019, which then became the Amazon special, Yearly Departed. Anyway, we put on this fundraiser to raise money for our season of live shows upcoming, and when the world shut down, as we all know, there were none. So we put our heads together and kind of, wanted to give our artists a creative outlet during this time. So we came up with this prompt. We came up with this commission and reached out to our community of writers, playwrights, and basically asked for everyone to write 10 pages, write a short play. It's, through the lens of isolation, what everybody's kind of personal experience, relationship to being stuck in our homes. And
I forget the actual prompt. Gina, maybe you remember. I feel like it was like, I think we said like survival, or I don't even know what we ended up, the prompt was. We
I'd
gave
have
like
to
a
look
bunch
up
of
the exact
describing
email,
words.
but I know it was just basically like your pandemic experience, or like what you want to say to
Yeah.
the moment, like, and then as it evolved, you sort of talked about how you had people covering different facets of what the experience could be. I mean, obviously there's a million, everyone has a different experience of this, but there are certain, I think, the experience of maybe people living alone versus people living with like 3 children could be sort of grouped into slightly different tracks,
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't wish for that time back, but I do, it was so inspiring to see the different, kind of different voices that came out of it. And we have 6 amazing short plays, and we could, create thousands based off of all of the different stories that there are to tell. But we have some really great ones in these 6, and then it was, we were like, well, what are we going to do with these? And so we brought in, we kind of assembled this team based off of these pieces of work, and brought on in 2 directors, and Sam can, explain all of the different people that were involved in the project, from directors to playwrights.
Yeah. Well, kind of to what we were saying earlier, there is this incredible wealth of talent in the theater community, and we decided to sort of just hone in on that. And so we ended up commissioning 6 different playwrights. So Ming Pfeiffer, who has been nominated for 3 Drama Desk Awards, including Outstanding Play for her play Usual Girls, and Gina Young, who's right here, who was the Humanitas Play LA winner, Joanna Castlemiller, who we're actually working on another project with right now, which is really exciting, but she was the 2021 New York Stage and Film Nexus Fellow, and Jihan Crowther, who is now writing Daisy Jones and the Six on Amazon and working on Barry Jenkins' forthcoming TV adaptation, The Underground Railroad, on Amazon. Shout out to our Amazon family. Anna Ziegler, whose play Photograph 51 was selected as a Best of the Year play by the Chicago Tribune, the Washington Post twice, the Telegraph. And finally, Tyler English Beckwith, who was the recipient of the 2018 Kennedy Center Paula Vogel Play Prize. So those are just a few of the accolades of just these 6 playwrights. They are just an incredible, incredible group of women with completely different stories to tell. And we brought on 2 directors because these 6 pieces, I feel like there was so much work to be done. We decided we wanted to work with two directors and not just one, and when did two theater directors ever get to work together? So we worked with Drama Desk nominee Tyne Raffaelli, who actually directed Ming Pfeiffer's Usual Girls, and Obie Award and Lily Award winning director Whitney White. And both of these women at the helm of this project really just turned it into something that we couldn't have anticipated, and we ended up writing and directing and editing and producing these 6 pieces into this digital format, which is the anthology series that we're going to screen the trailer of today.
We filmed it all remotely with iPhones.
Crazy.
Over Zoom. Was a challenge beyond, but so well worth it in the end. And yeah, so it kind of, how long did it take us?
We say May to May.
So it was a year.
Yeah, a year.
That we were.
But it was, I mean, I think a really prime example of our model and what it's changed into, which is to bridge this gap between theater and digital. And, you know, moving forward, we really try to create pieces that can live in both worlds, that can be stage productions and digitally streamed productions. And so, you know, for this piece, we're now in the film festival circuit, which we're so excited about. And yeah, I mean, should we?
I actually, I mean, I think that opens up, there's like 50 things I want to ask off of that, but I do think that there's something really interesting to the fact that this did start as a play commission. And even though I think every single writer is also a screenwriter, that we were approached as playwrights, you know, and that like, I could speak for myself that when I wrote this, I was thinking of it as a play that was then adapted for this, you know, digital, completely remote. And I think that's another thing that's just really cool that you mentioned, which is like the fact that it was entirely filmed remotely, like director and actor were in New York. I was here at LA. You all were in LA. None of us were in the same room, and we were all communicating, and the actors were filming themselves on iPhones, and just the level of like, you know, how lucky we are that we have access to the technology that allows us to do this. How awful it was that this like horrible pandemic did this to humanity and kept us all apart like this. But then like the beauty of kind of surmounting that together and like creating something out of it was just so cool. So yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely like as far away as we were from each other. It was definitely a bonding experience. And I love that we've all like been able to keep in contact through this process of getting into festivals. And like you said, you wrote it originally as a play, and our intent is to put this piece on stage in its totality, you know, post-festival circuit, post-premieres. We're really excited about that element of it, for sure.
Yeah. Going back to our roots. But
we have a trailer here today.
Yeah,
so
I think it's time. I think this is the moment.
Now, okay. How do we do that?
Well, I think Diane needs.
Oh yeah, okay. So we messaged Diane. Sorry, this is a Portland panel Zoom moment for everyone to experience in real time. So I'm just gonna write.
This is a behind the scenes tech moment.
Right, trailer. Play trailer, please. Okay. This is how we do tech nowadays. Oh, but she's so efficient that it's been done.
Ooh. Okay, how do they do this? Hold on. Yeah. Ow!
Morning, everyone.
Hi, honey.
You're kicking the leg. You're kicking the leg. You're kicking the leg. You're kicking the leg. Yeah.
Because I'm missing everyone, and I've never felt so profoundly alone in my entire life.
How long do you think a person can go without human touch before they start to lose their minds?
I'm suddenly hit with the fact that no one's actually going to see me or my vagina in person for who knows how long.
Are people who choose to be alone allowed to get lonely?
Realizing that maybe regular life just dilutes things so we don't notice the nothing we're doing.
Because the police are just looking for people to use their their weapons on 1 minute past curfew.
You gotta do something, Lori.
Hey, there she is.
There she is. She glows. Mhm.
Thank you.
That was fun. We're so excited to, show the movie in time. That'll be so fun. Can't wait.
Yeah. Do you want to talk anything about the trailer, or anything you want to share about that?
I mean, it was just kind of what we were talking about before, just how amazing it was to be able to work with 6 different writers and 2 different directors and 16 actors, all sort of digitally, and how intimate it felt, although it was so far apart. I mean, you were the writer of one of the pieces. What was your experience?
Well, actually, one thing that I'm actually not sure if you two know this, but this was the only thing I said yes to. Like, how do I explain this? Like, pandemic happens, we're all going through our own experiences of like grief or trauma or whatever it is. And I actually was feeling a lot of resentment towards arts organizations that were very quickly being sort of like, send us your pandemic plays. We'll be rewarding one artist with a, whatever. Like, it was very strange how many arts organizations had this very extractive, like, send us things and then maybe we'll pick one of you to give $1,000 to or something like that. And I was feeling a lot of like anger about that. And I did have a few other requests to write things. And I was like, I don't know how to write. Like, we have no perspective on this. We are all in it. We are all in this right now. We do not have the perspective needed to write about it unless we're going to try to just write in the moment. And then I got your request and I was like, I mean, first of all, the opportunity to work with you when we've been talking about it for so long. Second of all, the other people that you had brought in on the project, but then also the fact that it was such a pure request where you were kind of like, you can say anything you want, like literally, like it was like whatever I wanted to do. And there was still a feedback process and a notes process and all of that stuff. But the fact that like, I could just kind of put all that out. So I did. So my piece is a solo performer on a Zoom, literally talking about that feeling of resentment of like being expected to create art about the thing while living through the thing, and like the trauma around that and how hard that is. And that really was a lot of my pandemic experience. Like the first few months I couldn't write or do anything, I mean, for the most part, I think interestingly, I sort of took the trauma of it in stride because like I was in New York for 9/11. I've had other traumas in my life that felt big like this, so it wasn't like this was like my first and only experience like this, but at the same time, it was months of not being able to write anything. Mm-hmm. And this was the first thing I wrote.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah. And that is just, that is the voice of your play.
Yeah.
We definitely put that into your piece. In a really beautiful way.
Yeah, and then there's a twist at the end that I won't spoiler. There's a twist at the end of my piece, but I won't spoiler it. So just everyone has to see the film. Yeah.
But we are so grateful that you said yes, and this sort of like us being able to reach out to our favorite writers and our favorite actors and for them all to say yes. I mean, I remember when we were talking about who in a perfect world would we want your piece, and our first choice 100% was Roberta Colindres. I mean, you wrote it.
Oh yeah.
With Roberta in mind. And it was so amazing that we would reach out to some of these artists that we're just such, big fans of. And they did say yes because of that kind of, I think, freedom and ability to work with this like tight-knit community of theater professionals and people that we all feel this sort of interconnectedness with. And
yeah.
Oh yeah, that was
to the point of what you were saying earlier about it being like, this is like, and we are so grateful that you said yes to this, but I like to think of it, we call it a time capsule because it very much is this time capsule for all of us, you know, both on screen and also off screen for like, I think, you know, everybody collectively was struggling with mental health and these different things during that time. So it's just like, it, you know, it was really a journey, and it was really, and when I watch it, I, you know, think back to what I was going through during that time. And like, it really is kind of a conversational like thing where it is very much like speaks to what everyone was going through individually during the time.
I also think that, like, although this is a quite technically a pandemic piece because it was filmed and produced and edited and written in a pandemic, it is also just kind of a piece about like the singularly isolating experience of just loneliness. Like, it's kind of just about that. And so I think it like lives outside of this pandemic world, and came out of it, of course, but has the opportunity to be this kind of like relatable piece of content of like what it just is to be a woman alone in fear or in, you know, sorrow or in just loneliness.
Mm-hmm. Or in your field. I mean, I think all the time about, you know, I was part of a conversation salon not that long ago with women who were artistic directors of their theaters. And it's like, that is such a small number that exists. And then also artistic directors in general don't really talk to each, you know, they don't really talk to each other. It's a very isolating profession, no matter what your gender is. And then also if you are a woman, you are in like a minority gender within that profession. So it can be an isolating job. Yeah. Yeah. So I saw all those little laurels on the trailer, which is really exciting. What are the next steps for the film? You said it's making the film festival circuit. Tell me more about what that means. I don't even know the full current update.
I mean, we send the updates as they come. We've been super lucky thus far and have already gotten into 9 film festivals and are lucky enough to be here talking about it and sharing the trailer for the first time, which is exciting. And as we said, we're really excited to put this piece on stage, and we sort of have to like go through the proper steps and finish out the digital premieres so that we can start to focus on the live premiere, which is exciting. But at the same time, you know, we're working on a bunch of other projects where we, you know, do the same thing, which is staff up women in leadership and theater professionals and create work that can be on both stage and screen.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that sort of new emerging hybrid world that a lot of people have strong feelings for and against. And also I would love to hear what your upcoming plans for 2022 are. But maybe let's start with the first question, which is like, so there are some people who are like, theater should not be streamed. It ruins the art form. It loses us money, or, you know, there are people who are very, very anti-theater being streamed in any way, shape, or form. And then there are other people who think it's our only hope for the future. And then there's also a lot of different ideas of what it can mean for like a digital and theater hybrid, and like how much is the camera involved with the you know, actors, and like where is the camera in the space and what does that look like? And I'd love to know what you both are, you know, fans of. Where do you land on that spectrum?
Well, I think you want to take this one?
Well, we can tag team.
Yeah, let's
well, I think I also wanted to just mention that we like, you know, I think that there are some things that belong and only should live digitally. We are working on a television show, for example, that is very much not a staged piece, but I think that we feel, and I think, you know, a lot of the camp like us are seeing more and more that these people are getting really creative. There are, you know, I think we think of like filmed theater and we think about like our like, you know, 8th grade class play being like filmed and it's some like grainy, it's like, that's not okay. But I think that people are getting more adventurous and actually and creative. And I think that we see it being done like on Hulu in and of itself.
Yeah.
And obviously there's Hamilton and all of these big productions being filmed.
I think the difference there, and I think we hear the argument, we hear it every day when we're taking meetings about like what our model is. And I think because we sort of began with this bridging the gap of theater and digital, for us, like we hear the argument, we get the argument, and we also respectfully disagree. I think that we feel that theater is this beautiful and singular, exciting art form that can be experienced digitally as well. And so for all of our live performances, we always had this digital element to it where we were live streaming it on our platform, which began super, super small. And like, even if 2 people were watching, we were reaching 2 people that felt like a part of this experience. And, for us, I think that's exactly right. Like, we definitely feel like there are some pieces that only live as a TV show or as a film. But in the theater world now, I don't think we're afraid of creating space to bridge that gap and to make it something that can be experienced by more than just the people in an audience one night. And I think, the way that Hulu did it with In and of Itself, and of course Hamilton, these were shows that had, reached a lot of critical success, and they played like hundreds and hundreds of performances. And then, a studio comes in and they film it professionally, and then it gets streamed, which is amazing. And I think they did a really gorgeous job with both of them. I think in sort of our model that excites us, we think about potentially doing that earlier on. Like if there's a pop-up performance that only lasts for 5 performances, and we come in and we film that as it's happening and release sort of this grittier version. And like Nat said, you think about filming theater as like your 8th grade solo show, and like that's not really the way we see it. And Keep This Far Apart is a really good example of like being able to create something that felt intimate like a play but was cinematic in a lot of ways. And I think that there's such an opportunity to really like push the boundaries with that. So
yeah, and I think
we're into it.
Yeah, and we're still figuring it out and thinking about it. And I think that, most importantly, we just feel that theater creators, these storytellers, these female storytellers, and, I think that that's tapping into that. Like, I think there's an opportunity to use, that's what's so exciting, is that theater makers are so innovative. They get so creative. Like when we were working on Keep This Far Apart, we had a lighting designer come in, a theater lighting designer come in, and like every single vignette, you see a different kind of a lighting theme happening, and just the way that they're.
To be clear, she was also remote, right? Like she didn't break anyone's house.
Mailing people lights.
Yeah,
like we were mailing costumes and lights and microphones.
Yeah.
It was like utter mayhem.
But yeah, I just think that it's just, we're tapped into this amazing creative community of people, and like with the stories we tell and the way that people tell stories and the way that people, these people think is just kind of exciting. And I think,
well, and I think, yes, 100% agree. And I think ultimately we're also looking at an issue of accessibility now too, right? Because I think, like, I totally get it. As a writer, sometimes I'm like, oh, this is a play and it's only a play. Oh, this is more of a TV show. Oh, this is a play, but I could see it making a film. It could be a good film, like that kind of stuff with my own work. But at the end of the day, like live performance can exclude a lot of people, right? And I'm thinking specifically about how live streaming, digital, video, any kind of content that is like available online is more accessible for like disabled folks, for folks with childcare situations, I mean, I even think of just how the way younger people consume media a lot. It's like a lot of young folks might not have the cash for a big top dollar ticket production, but they would totally watch it on their phone and be excited by it. And as we all know, ticket prices have become extremely exclusionary of like most of humanity. And that's not how theater used to be. That's not what the roots of theater was. And now it's like Amazon and Netflix are more accessible to all of humanity, you know, and like that's becoming, I mean, I shouldn't say all of humanity, but you know what I mean? It's becoming that if you have access to the internet, you have access to this wealth of digital content for like pennies.
Right.
And so that is part of why I think that the purists who don't want to put theater in any kind of digital content are kind of, I mean, they're in danger of just like letting their own art form die out. And so I think it's really important.
Yeah, it's archaic. That's right. And that's exactly right. And that's how we feel, because you start, you know, like we said in the beginning, like theater is made to foster community, and why would we want to reach this wider net, this wider audience of people that might not be able to be there? Like it's just an opportunity to like keep things.
I mean, it's quite literally for public consumption, and we want to make it available for the public. But it's what Diane was saying when we first got onto this Zoom, that, you know, that they record these panels and put them on their site and on YouTube because of the number of people who are in foreign countries and who want to participate but can't. And so I think it's important to be cognizant of people's timing and availability and childcare situations, and having a theater performance that happens 8 times a week at 7 p.m. obviously doesn't work for everyone. And if it's a limited run, like 5 weeks, there are so many people that don't get to experience that piece of theater. And so, we fall on the other side, which is we really do believe in creating ways to digitize theater.
Yeah. But then I also hear you when you were like, people are craving community. And I was like, oh man, we are all craving in-person community right now. At least
we are.
Most of us who are extroverts are like, please, in-person community, you know. I just did a show last night, which was my first time doing my own work since the pandemic. And it was just like to be in a room, and of course, everyone's vaccinated, everyone's wearing masks except the singers. And just to be in a room with that many people laughing and crying together was just so overwhelmingly powerful. But at the same time, when Sorority did shows on Zoom over the course of the pandemic, I felt like we were able to find a really cool hybrid where I'm like, this is happening digitally, it's happening through a screen, but there's a really active chat bar and it is all happening live. So like all the performers are live. And if people are posting things in the chat, they can respond to it. So it's not the same as like watching a TV show and kind of sitting back and, you know, we all know the way our brains kind of turn to mush when we're watching TV. It's a different experience when you're like engaged with a performance online.
Yeah, I mean, in the first like 5 months of the pandemic, before we commissioned Keep This Far Apart, we did sort of a live, we did like an open call for digital entertainment, and we, you know, ended up having like hundreds of submissions, and we ended up choosing, I think, 20 finalists who we would then like present their work on our platform. And obviously, like that's just our small version of participating in the conversation, but we were able to reach so many different artists from different countries, artists that we would never ever get to work with in person. And so, you know, we called it our digital wake and our digital rebirth, which is still on our Instagram platform and on our website, so you can visit both. We're WeTheWomenCollective.com, and we're at We The Women Collective on Instagram. But we'll
look at you plugging this stuff. Look at you plugging it.
But yeah, I mean, we never would have reached half of those artists. I would say like a good portion of them were from different countries. And so it gave us an opportunity by creating this sort of like Instagram open call digital platform to work with artists that we'll never get to work with in person.
Exactly.
I went to a bunch of your sororities over the pandemic, and I found it was such a light and And
Yeah.
and it was true, like there was so much engagement, there was so much support in the way, obviously we, you know, reading in a chat room, but you could feel it, you could really feel it with you know, the people that came to your shows.
So you
I feel
did
like there were
feel
like
like-
hundreds of people, and they were all over the world too, right?
And you felt like you were in a community in that moment, like you felt like you were there.
I mean, there was like, you know, emoji hand clapping and talk back and then like, I think the one I went to, we turned it into a dance party.
Yes.
There was like
Always a
and
dance
then
party.
everybody was dancing.
And
in
then,
their
yeah,
little
we can
box.
spotlight people's Zoom windows. I mean,
Yeah.
as they dance, and sometimes
so
people have their own
fun.
disco ball or their own like lighting setup at home, which is really respect to those people with the LED lighting at home. Yeah.
That was right in the depths.
Yeah.
I know it's something to look forward to. I remember every Thursday, Z-Way would do the live, and I would tune in every Thursday for an hour at 5 o'clock. And it was just like, oh, like, this is what I have to do. Like, this is my plan for the night. And it did make you feel like a community because you are like messaging in the chat room and everybody's kind of laughing together. And like, I think it's pretty amazing that these creatives were able to come up with a way to generate content and to keep audiences engaged during this unprecedented time.
Yeah, for sure. So you started mentioning a little bit about your goals for like hybrid stuff, and you did plug your stuff a little bit, but will you tell us specifically anything about your plans for the coming year?
Yeah, we could talk about 2 projects.
Is everything top secret? There's something you can tell us?
I just
None of them are top secret, but they're 2
What are we
ideas
doing?
we could talk about Acrosis and Lost Untitled.
Well, we could talk
could.
about those. Well, I mean, mostly we have a television show that we're developing. We're developing pilot, and that's really more in our kind of, you know, non-theatrical space. And we again are working with some amazing writers that originated in playwriting and now are working in television. So that's an exciting project. It's called Los Fantasmas, but I don't know that we should be talking about it because we don't, you know, maybe it will
That
never
was a
see the
good-
light of day. We don't know.
Listen, that was a good little teaser. And then our other project that we're really excited about is another kind of hybrid project, and it's a play that we commissioned by one of our Keep This Far Apart playwrights. Her name's Joanna Castle-Miller, and it's called Acrosis, and it is a gun violence prevention project. And we were lucky enough to connect with Everytown for Gun Safety, and they connected us with their network of survivors. And Joanna conducted over 15 hours of transcribed interviews with 5 female survivors in their survivors network who talked about their own experiences with this particular subject and their losses, and those interviews were then taken and turned into this play that we're creating, which is called Acrosis, and it's sort of like a whodunit, and it takes place in a college symposium on gun violence. So that's kind of all we'll say about it now, but the model kind of and the mission remains the same. Of course, staffing up all women in leadership positions, but also this hybrid. So for a show like this, it is of course entertainment, but it is also, you know, a piece of education. It's really educational, and we have access to these like incredible interviews who have been gracious enough to really share their stories. And so, you know, we really want to find a way that a piece like this is on stage while also being able to be digital in some way and also be accessible to students. So that is really what we're working on right now with that project.
And of course, Keep This Far Apart, finding a way to perform it live.
Live and distribution platforms.
Our goals for 2022 is to see it on stage. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. I'm sure we're forgetting some things, but We don't always have our fingers in lots of different pots, but
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Rock stars.
and Gina, you mentioned the you did an event not an event. You did a show last night and it was a huge
Yeah.
success. Can you tell us about that and also what you are looking to 2022 and stuff you're working on?
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to take December off because this was a year, right? Like this, I feel like for a lot of people, for a lot of us, I feel like this year was almost even more difficult than last year because it was like it all starts catching up with you. You know, I don't know. I was feeling a lot of ripple effects, a lot of ripple effects. So I am developing a play. It's called Straight Play, a queer beach blanket musical. It's sort of a musical. It's very meta. It's very queer. And we did a performance last night that was supposed to be a stage reading at the LAX festival, but my cast was so good that I was like, what if we just did a little dancing, like a little bit of dancing. And then what if we had costumes for everyone? And then and so it ended up being like just shy of a full production almost. We had no sets. And they were on book the whole time. But other than that, there were costumes, live band, they sang everything. They were phenomenal. And so in 2022, I'm going to be doing more readings of that and trying to work towards the full production. I am developing a pilot. Those are my two personal big projects for 2022. And then Sorority, my company, I think as much as everyone is craving live shows, I think we are going to look into doing what is the digital version, like this thing that we do where like it's usually a collection of artists premiering new short work. What would it look like to do that in a purely digital format? But when we talked about the eighth grade play syndrome or whatever it is, like what I think of when I think of that is like, right, you imagine like a camcorder at the back of the room that's locked off, that doesn't do anything, and it's grainy and that sort of thing. And that is the main reason why I think filming theater like doesn't work, or people think that filmed theater looks bad. But if you plan right and you have like, a couple of Steadicam operators that are like avoiding each other or whatever, like you can actually film theater in a way that looks really good. So I am curious if we can, come up with some sort of version of Sorority that is filmed, but that doesn't look like everyone in a theater staring at a stage, and that feels a little bit more immersive, or a little bit more, that's not even the right word, a little bit more just even high production value, right? Like I just want it to look good and feel good, and for it to be something that you are excited to watch instead of feeling like you're watching that home video kind of thing.
We say elevated. We say elevated straight theater.
Exactly.
Well, it's like
exactly.
what they do when they film soap operas, like you're there, it's a multicam, you're following like different characters. I feel like it's done on
It's done.
Yeah, it can totally be done. And speaking of our own director, speaking of nothing, this is apropos of nothing, but I would like to bring it up. Our own director, Whitney White, from Keep This Far Apart, directed a stage production that Colleen Labella, who is a friend of mine, did the Center Theater Group adaptation of for live stream, right? That was a very confusing way of saying Whitney White directed a production. Colleen Labella did a live stream version of it for Center Theater Group in Los Angeles. And for me, the coolest part of the whole thing was the way that like the theater was, they didn't hide the fact that it was being filmed in a theater, even though it was filmed in such a way that it was much more like a TV show. Like it would cut between one face, other, turn the camera around. Like it was very much cutting like a TV show. But there were moments where the lights were meant to do sun up and sun down, and they just filmed them. So you're watching a stage light dim and the sun is setting. And I thought that was just so cool. I was like, that was one of those moments where I was like, see, that's how we should be using the form. Like that is so imaginative. And there were even moments where you saw the empty seats in the theater. And for me, I felt that pang of like, oh, no one could be there because this was filmed at a time when it like wasn't safe for people to be in that room together. But then it also could, if you really want to get deep about it, it's like, the play is dealing with all of these like class issues and racism. And you're like, who would normally be in those seats consuming this art? And like, would they be implicating themselves in it or not? You know, like, and so that to me was like another level of like seeing those empty seats and being like, who normally sits in those seats for a play like this, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, that was a tangent, but that was an effective example of how
And Whitney White. Yeah,
can really be done. Exactly. And Whitney White. And I'm curious, like what my company can do with that, you know, once we like really put our heads together. So
yeah, it's really exciting. Wait, I saw something, maybe you don't want to talk about it, but you were doing like I saw on Instagram, you were doing like a show where you give advice, maybe?
I do. I'm happy to talk about it. So I have a new digital series and it's called Baseline. And you can only watch it by joining the Serif platform. I will drop that in the chat. It's called Serif. I think the website is serif.space. But basically, it's a queer members club slash, I mean, everyone's welcome. You don't have to be queer, but the content is very queer. And it is sort of like a social networking meets content platform where there's a bunch of different shows on a bunch of different verticals. And mine, it's like elements of advice column meets talk show meets presenting some of my sorority performers. So for example, in our debut episode, you know, a few people call in for advice about being queer writers or about finding community and that sort of thing. And then we had this one really funny long call talking about like dating, and this, you know, the caller was just hilarious and was talking about like, why do people think I'm a fuckboy? What does that term even mean? Da, da, da. And, you know, she's this like hilarious kind of butch lesbian. And then at the end, I was able to show this music video by this incredible artist, B. Steadwell. Oh, you had talked about maybe how we want to plug artists. There's one I can plug. B. Steadwell, who's this phenomenal, you know, like singer-songwriter, but also musical theater composer and the whole thing. And the song was called Fuckboy, and it tied in so perfectly. Like it just dovetailed with the whole conversation. But we were able to sort of do like a, you know, ending on that note of like, here's this video that's like beautifully shot and really fun. And it's all just going to showcase queer art and community. So basically that's my vibe. That's my brand. It's queer community, queer art, it's artistry.
Call in and get some advice.
Yeah, we're gonna call it. We're definitely calling it next week. 100%.
Anyone who wants to can film a video, like take a video vertically on your phone and send it in.
Just pretend like we're on the phone.
That's, oh, I've had that too. I had someone call in on their hairbrush, like, and it was hilarious. Yeah, and that was just like another foray into digital content because it was pandemic times, and I was like, and the platform hit me up and they were like, what would you want to do if you could do anything? And I was like, can I do a long, you know, scripted drama, da da da? And they were like, well, what if it was a short and unscripted thing? And I was like, well, then it's going to be this. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
That's great. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, this is awesome.
I mean, it is always such a pleasure to chat with you two, and I'm so glad we're in the same city and working on the same, you know, concentric circles. If we did have any questions from the audience, no pressure, but if anyone out there listening wants to drop a question into the chat, this is your moment. This is it. And
we can answer questions on the YouTube thing later when it's posted, because I know the live is not really a question area.
Yeah.
But thank you, Portland, for giving us this platform and this time to talk about both of our companies, the work we're doing, and for sharing our trailer and for being just an amazing hub for artists. And
we can put in the chat. I mean,
yeah, please drop your, I know you said it before, but tell us your website, tell us your Instagram, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, we'll have all that stuff on the YouTube.
Oh, you don't want to put it in here because we don't know.
Just say it again for good measure.
Okay,
let's say it.
We're at We the Women Collective on Instagram, and we're wethewomencollective.com. That's our website.
Yes.
And we have merch.
I want a shirt. First of all, I want a shirt. My company also has shirts. And you can find us at sororitytheaterprojects.com, sororitytheaterprojects.com, or sorority theater on Instagram. And I will also put those in the chat.
Okay, great. Perfect.